Welcome back, and now we turn again to the ongoing financial crisis with a man who's been right at the centre of it. Less than a couple of weeks ago, Lehman Brothers in the United States failed to be rescued and collapsed. But there's one case in the annals of these events where a bank did not collapse, and that bank is the Halifax Bank of Scotland, or HBOS, in the UK, which was saved by Lloyds-TSB. HBOS had been capitalised at more than £30 billion a year ago, nearly $60 billion. But there's a happy ending to that story, and that's pretty rare these days in these subjects. We turn now to the chairman of Lloyds, who's been at the centre of all this, Victor Black. Victor, welcome.
Thank you.
How long did it take, really, to do this, and what was the key factor that made your takeover, your merger work, and something like Lehman Brothers not work?
Well, let me start with the story as far as we're concerned. HBOS and ourselves have wanted to do this for some time. Andy Hornby, who's the chief executive of HBOS, was on my board at Great Universal Stores some years ago. And when it was announced that I was going to become chairman of Lloyds-TSB, he called me up and said we should have a chat, and we talked about the prospect of combining the two businesses. We were effectively fourth and fifth among the big British clearers, and therefore the combination would have given us real strength and the ability to serve customers much better in this marketplace, in the United Kingdom marketplace. The problem was, and the reason we never were able to advance those talks, this goes back 2 or 3 years, is that the Competition Commission, under the rules then applying, would almost certainly have said that they wanted to maintain a competitive environment with 5 major players in the United Kingdom and prevented us from doing it. So we talked together, Andy talked to my chief executive, Eric Daniels. Those talks have gone on spasmodically over a period of time. What's changed really recently to allow the transaction to take place are 2 things. First of all, there's a new player in the market. Banco Santander from Spain have arrived, and they have bought Abbey and Alliance from Leicester, so they're now a big player in the banking and the mortgage market in the United Kingdom. So there's another character, so the competition issues have somewhat changed. But also in this current financial climate, as you just referred to it, there were concerns about the future of the whole of the sector, and the government, I think, felt that consolidation of the sector was something that it should now look at.
So they said they wouldn't put it to the competition authorities, in fact?
They said they would allow it to go through without the need for a 9 or 12-month investigation. And in times of great uncertainty that we have at the moment, there's no doubt that banks couldn't easily go through long periods of uncertainty about ownership.
And was the conversation with, the alleged conversation at the drinks party between you and Gordon Brown a crucial factor?
Well, it was a culmination of discussions that I'd had with the Prime Minister and with the regulatory authorities for some weeks, making the point that if there was to be consolidation and if the government thought that was important, then they had to do something about the competition issues. Because, as I said, you couldn't have banks sitting with uncertainty about ownership for 9 or 12 months. So if consolidation was going to be needed, then the government was going to have to address that issue. What happened at that cocktail party was that the Prime Minister confirmed that after the earlier discussions that we'd had, that was the view that he and the authorities would take.
And what are you going to call the new giant? What's it going to be called?
I don't know. We're going to do a very serious exercise talking to the HBOS people to decide what the best name for the group is. And to be honest, David, the discussions took place over a very short period of time, and the question of the name and the appropriate brand is an issue for professionals and marketing people and so on to decide what the best outcome is. I'm sure Lloyds will be part of it, though.
Will be part of it, and maybe end up with Al Jazeera Finance or something. That would bring the whole world into the story. Coming on to America, the situation is difficult there, and different. Both of those words are utterly true. But in the situation there at the moment, I mean, there's the pressure there for the government to get involved, and the negotiations are going on. But actually here, Gordon Brown has said he wouldn't do that here.
I don't think he needs to, David. Here you've got a small group of banks that are well regulated, where we've got a pretty good idea of what's in their books. In the States, you've got thousands of banks and very heavy interbank activity, very heavy trading activity. And what's happened in the States is that there have been created various instruments, assets, we now call them toxic assets, some of which should frankly never have seen the light of day, and which are sitting on the books of a number of banks and causing great uncertainty. The problem about the interbank market, which is absolutely critical for the liquidity and funding of banks around the world, the problem at the moment is that that market is almost frozen. And it's frozen because of uncertainty over the strength of a number of banking institutions around the world. And we've seen some go under, we've seen some forced amalgamations. And until that uncertainty is taken out of the marketplace, this interbank market and the liquidity of money is going to be, if not frozen, I mean, it's going to be very slow. What the Americans are trying to do is to take all these toxic assets away from the banks, buy them, put them into a bad bank or a receptacle somewhere, so that the uncertainty is taken away. Banks are clear on what they've got and what they haven't got. They will get rid of the stuff that is causing difficulty and can move on. It's a very important move.
And it affects the whole world. If this thing fell apart, it would not just affect America or North America or the Western world. It would have its impact worldwide.
It affects the world, it affects the Western world much more. I mean, if you talk to banks, as I do, in China and the Far East and Australia and the Middle East, they're less affected by what's going on. They're just more distant from it. And they're less involved in that interbank trade.
And what about when Warren Buffett says that this crisis he compared to Pearl Harbor? Is that over the top, or?
Slightly before my time, David, to make the comparison. It's a bit like Alan Greenspan saying it's the worst crisis for 100 years. Well, I'm not quite as old as Alan.
Yeah.
It's serious. I mean, and you've got to recognise that there are two separate concerns. One is the seizing up of the banking market, which needs to be unlocked and needs to be unlocked quickly. The second issue, which is very much a domestic UK issue, is the economy. Are we in recession? How bad is it going to be? Is there going to be a dry up of consumer spending and so on? What's the effect on business and people going to be? The two are interrelated, but they're kind of separate. But the first thing to do is to get liquidity back into the banking system. And what's happening in the States, I mean, Hank Paulson has been fantastic in America. What's happening there is right, stroke, essential. And something has to be done, and it has to be done today.
Has to be done today. And talking of the time frame, I mean, how long are we going to be talking about an ongoing crisis? Or when will there be a light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, there'll be light at the end of the tunnel if this deal is done by, and the Congress approves it today. And that, I think, will make a big difference, not overnight, but progressively, and you'll be able, use your word, to see light at the end of the tunnel. We'll see gently markets unlocking, unfreezing, and activity beginning to move so that banks have got the money to lend. And obviously that's the lifeblood of the economy and of people's individual economies.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you with us. I suppose, Victor, that Lloyds could, it looks as though the front of your beloved Manchester United shirts may be available.
I hadn't thought of that, David, but it's an interesting idea and I will pass it on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Victor Blank, thank you.